Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just a brief introduction to Mufti Abdul Rahman. Mufti Saab was born and raised here in Chicago. He graduated and finished his memorization of the Quran under Qayyid Abdul Mannan Saab at Sufa Educational Guidance. He then pursued his Adamiyya course in Darul Uloom Buffalo, Madrasa Samia, and he completed from there. And then thereafter, he enrolled into the Darul Ifta Chicago under the tutelage of Mufti Abrar Mirza. And he then completed from there. Alhamdulillah, currently he serves as one of the instructors for the Tahfiz program here at Masjid Uthman full-time, mashallah. So without further ado, I'll hand over the mic, inshallah, to Mufti Saab. This is my phone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen, Sayyidina wa Habibina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd, faqad qala Allah ta'ala fil Qur'an al-Majid, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. صدق الله العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. So alhamdulillah, Ramadan is just around the corner. It's less than a week away. And it seems like the previous Ramadan, it just passed by. And this happens every year, that when the month of Ramadan comes, it seems like Ramadan just passed by recently. So many people, they were present in the last year of Ramadan. However, they're not present for this year of Ramadan. And we have to realize that Allah Ta'ala, He gave us something that He wasn't able to give them, and that was the opportunity to spend this Ramadan, to be alive for this month of Ramadan. When you look at our elders and when you look at our scholars, you see that one thing they're really particular about was time. The time they would spend not only in the month of Ramadan, but also outside of the month of Ramadan. But significantly in the month of Ramadan, they would have this set schedule which they would follow. And when you would go to India, Pakistan, or any of the khanqahs back home, and you go to a scholar's khanqah, you see right when you get there, there's a schedule that's set for everyone to follow. That after Fajr, ta'aleem will happen, and then people rest up, and then they'll wake up and ta'aleem will happen again. And they'll have this whole schedule throughout the day, and at the night, they'll have Salatul Taraweeh. And after the Salatul Taraweeh prayer, they'll stay awake, do tahajjud, make dhikr, and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you look at that, you see the way they spend their time, the way they set their schedule. This teaches us that, alhamdulillah, we still have a week left for the month of Ramadan. So we should try to set our schedules from now. So when the month of Ramadan comes, we're able to maximize the opportunity of having that month of Ramadan. And we shouldn't delay it and wait until the month of Ramadan comes. And then once it comes, we make a schedule. And by the time we're done making the schedule and acting upon the schedule, already half of the month passes by. And in order to realize the significance of the month of Ramadan and to maximize the benefit of the month of Ramadan, we understand this through a hadith of Prophet ﷺ, in which Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, and it's narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كم من صائم ليس له من صيامه إلا الظمأ. That there are many people who fast, but they attain nothing from their fast except thirst. And then Prophet ﷺ carries on and he mentions وَكَم مِّن قَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ إِلَّا السَّهَرِ. That there are many people who stand up in the night prayer and they're spending their whole night standing up for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praying tahajjud. However, they attain nothing from that whole night prayer except being awake. And scholars mention because the reason for this is because they don't have the sincerity in their heart. That's one way scholars mention it. But another way is that in order for any action to be accepted, you have to know how to perform that action. And in order for us to maximize the month of Ramadan, we have to know the fiqh, we have to know the rulings regarding the month of Ramadan. So inshallah, with that, we'll carry on in the month of Ramadan, the fiqh of Ramadan, and we'll cover a few aspects. And one is the fiqh of fasting, the other is taraweeh, and the other is i'tikaf. So inshallah, starting off with the fiqh of fasting. So what does fasting mean? So Sawm, lughatan, linguistically, sawm means to abstain or to withhold from an action or to withhold from speech or from speaking. And sawm, fasting, is something that didn't start with our ummah. Fasting was something that was there in the previous nations as well. And Allah Ta'ala mentions this in the Quran, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. That, O believers, fasting is made obligatory upon you the way it was made obligatory upon those people who were before you. So, and you understand that, yes, although fasting was there for the previous nations, it wasn't always the same method, meaning they didn't have to abstain from certain actions from a certain time to a certain time. Rather, it was a different action for them. And we understand this from another ayah Allah Ta'ala mentions, where He is telling Maryam alayhi salam that فَكُلِي وَاشْرَبِي وَقَرِّي عَيْنًا فَإِمَّا تَرِيِنَّ مِنَ الْبَشَرِ أَحَدًا فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا. Over there, Allah Ta'ala is telling Maryam alayhi salam that tell them that you're taking a vow to fast, and what are you going to do during that fast? You're not going to speak to anyone. So during that time, fasting was to withhold from talking. However, in our Sharia, what does fasting mean? So the legal and the Shari'i definition of fasting is to abstain from eating, drinking, and marital relations during daylight hours with intention. So when it says to abstain from eating, it means to abstain from eating anything in general. And same applies to drinking and marital relations. It's referring to the intimacy between a husband and wife. And daylight hours is referring to true dawn. So there's two types of dawns. One is false dawn, in which you see a vertical light appear in the sky. And this is also called al-fajr al-kadhib. So this is called false dawn. And then you have the second type, which is true dawn, which is also called al-fajr al-sadiq or sabah sadiq as well. So this is a horizontal light that appears in the sky. So this is when our fast begins. It begins from true dawn, when that horizontal light appears in the sky, until sunset, which is the time of Salatul Maghrib. And this is going to be done with the intention. And now, who is fasting obligated upon? Right? It's not obligated upon everyone. So who is it obligated upon? So fasting is obligated upon a sane adult, a sane person, and adult person, someone who hit puberty or passed the age of puberty, and someone who is healthy. So if someone is healthy and they have no valid excuse to not fast, it is obligated upon them to fast. But however, if someone is ill, someone has a valid excuse to not fast, they have some medical reasoning behind it, so for them, fasting will not be obligated. And obviously a Muslim, because non-Muslims, they don't act upon the ahkam, and someone who is free from hayd and nifas, meaning someone who is free from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. And just a note that hayd and nifas, this is not only is it not obligated upon them, but they're not allowed to fast either. And someone who fasting is obligated upon, if they do not fast, qada is necessary for them in order to make up the fast that they have missed. And another point to note is that fidya is only for those who are not able to fast permanently. Meaning, for example, if a woman is breastfeeding or they're pregnant and they're not able to fast during the month of Ramadan, so it does not mean that they give fidya for every fast they're not able to make, because this is eventually going to end. And eventually you'll come to a point, inshallah, where they're able to fast again. So once they get the ability to fast again, they will make up the fast. And they are not allowed to give fidya. And let's say, for example, doctors mentioned regarding someone that, oh, this illness is going to be until, the end. And it so happens that this person, he also gives fidya for the fast he has missed. However, what happened through the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that illness ends and he's able to fast again, or he gets better. So now for this person, even though he gave fidya for the fast he had missed, he has to make up those fasts. And after we find out who fasting is obligated upon, we'll get into the different types of fast. So you get 6 different types of fast. The first one is fard, the obligatory fast. These are the fasts that are found in the month of Ramadan. So only the fasts that are in the month of Ramadan are considered obligated upon the people who it is obligated upon. And the second type, you have the wajib, the mandatory fast. And these are those fasts that someone misses in the month of Ramadan, that they have to make up for. It's wajib for them to make up the fast that they have missed in the month of Ramadan. And the second are the wajib, are those nafil fasts that they broke. So nafil, a voluntary fast in of itself, it is voluntary to do. However, whenever you do any voluntary action, if you break it, it is wajib, it's mandatory upon you to make it up. Right? For example, someone starts a 2 rakat nafil prayer, and in the middle they break that salah. Although praying that nafil prayer was voluntary for them, it wasn't obligated upon them. However, since they broke that nafil prayer, they have to make that prayer up. Likewise, when it comes to a nafil fast, if someone breaks their nafil fast, now it will become wajib, it will become mandatory upon them to make up that fast. And a third type of wajib fast is those fasts done through vows, nuzur. So someone takes a vow that if such and such action happens, or if such and such thing happens, I take a vow that I will fast. So these type of fasts are also considered wajib and mandatory. Then you have the third type of fast, the sunnah fast. An example of this is the 10th of Ashura, along with either the 9th or the 11th. And then you have the mustahab, the recommended fast. These are examples of these is every Monday and Thursday, which the Prophet ﷺ would fast. And then you have every month the ayyam al-bid, the white days, every 13th, 14th, and 15th of every month. And you also have the 6 days of Shawwal. So these fasts are considered mustahab, they're recommended fast. And the fifth type, you have the makruh, the disliked fast. So in makruh, you have 2 types. One are those fasts which are prohibitively disliked, makruh tahrimi. And those fasts are the 2 days of Eid, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, and then 3 additional days of ayyam al-Tashriq, meaning the 3 days that follow Eid al-Adha. So these are considered the prohibitively disliked fast. And then you have the makruh tanzih, the mildly disliked fast. And examples of that is, for example, someone singles out Saturday to fast, and they think it's rewarding to fast on a Saturday. However, this will be considered disliked because this is associated with the Jews, because Jews would believe that fasting on Saturdays is considered something of a good nature, something that they get good deeds for. And the last type of fast you have are the nafil and the voluntary fast. These are those fasts, like we mentioned the fard, we mentioned the wajib, the sunnah, mustahab, and makruh fast. Anything besides those fasts will be considered nafil and will be considered voluntary fast. And then carrying on with the intention of fasting. So now when a person wants to fast, when does he have to make the intention? Because we mentioned in the definition, the shari'i and the legal definition of fasting, that intention is required for every type of fast. So now when does the intention have to be made? So you have 2 categories. One is the category in which intention and the specification of the fast has to be made the previous night before Fajr. So meaning it has to be made between the time of Maghrib and until true dawn, when Fajr enters. And what fasts are these, which you have to make this type of intention? You have the makeups of Ramadan. You have the qada of Ramadan fast. Right? So someone misses a Ramadan fast and they want to make it up, and they have the intention of making it up tomorrow. So they have to make the intention from Maghrib until true dawn in order for their fast to be valid the next day. The second type of fast are the makeups from voluntary nafil fast, which one broke. So as we mentioned, that if someone breaks a nafil fast, it becomes wajib on them to make up that fast. So now if this person wants to make up that nafil fast that they had broke, so they have to make the intention before true dawn. And the third is the fast of expiation, meaning the fast of kafara. We'll get into what kafara is, what necessitates kafara, but if someone is fasting for 2 months consecutively, they have to make an intention before true dawn every single day in order for their fast to count. And the fourth type are the unspecified vows, meaning nadr mutlaqs. So for example, someone takes a vow that if such and such thing happens, I take a vow that I will fast. He keeps it general. He doesn't specify when he's going to fast. So now for this fast, now when he wants to fast for this vow, he has to make the intention before true dawn, right? And then the second category is where the intention and the specification may be made from any time from the previous night before the midday of fasting, also known as Dahwatul Kubra. So in these type of fasts, you have more leniency, you have more time to make the intention. And before I get into which type of fast you can make this type of intention, I want to clarify what is considered the midday of fasting, Dahwatul Kubra. So there is a difference between, people usually associate midday of fasting with the zawal. However, there is a slight difference between the two. The midday of fasting is, you look at the time from true dawn. For example, let's say Fajr or true dawn starts at 5 o'clock a.m. and then Maghrib comes in at 7 p.m. So now you have 14 hours from true dawn until sunset. So now you'll take the half of that number, 14, which is 7, and now you'll add that on to 5 a.m. You'll add 7 hours. So now midday of fasting will be considered 12 p.m. So now if this person wants this fast to be valid, he has to make the intention before 12 p.m. But for Zawal, the time starts not from true dawn, but it starts from sunrise until sunset. So for example, let's say sunrise starts at 6 o'clock, or it starts at 7 o'clock. And sunset is at 7 o'clock p.m. So now you have 12 hours in between, and now you'll add 6 hours to 7 o'clock a.m., and you'll get 1 p.m. in that. So Zawal is at 1 p.m., whereas the midday of fasting is at 12 p.m. So there is a 1 hour difference between the two. So if a person were to make intention, let's say after 12 p.m., but before 1 p.m., their fast will not count because they are not making the intention before Dahwatul Kubra. They're not making the intention before the midday of fasting. And now what type of fast do you have the leniency to make the intention up to Dahwatul Kubra? You have the Ramadan fast during the month. So during the month of Ramadan, if someone wants to make intention and if they forget before sleeping or they forget to make it before true dawn, they have up till midday of fasting to make this intention. Another type of fast they could make this type of intention are the specified vows, the nadr muayyans, meaning someone specifies, someone takes a vow that if such and such action happens, I will keep a fast, for example, Monday. So now the day specified when he is going to keep that fast. So now since the day specified, he has up to midday of fasting, Dahwatul Kubra, to make the intention of the fast. And the last type are the voluntary fast, the nafil fast. So for any nafil fast, as long as he does not do anything that invalidates the fast, he has up till the midday of fasting to make the intention of that fast. So now that we know who fasting is obligated upon, now we know when the intention is supposed to be made, we'll get into the rulings when fast breaks. So when a fast breaks, you either have to make up the fast, you have to do qada of the fast, or you will have to do. All right, before carrying on, inshallah, for the month of Ramadan, you will have up to the midday of fasting to specify that you are going to be fasting that day. So if someone sleeps, let's say after Maghrib, and they forget to make intention and they wake up for Fajr, and at the time of Fajr they also forgot, and later they take a nap and they wake up at 10 o'clock a.m., for example. So they still have 2 hours to make the intention that I am going to keep my fast today. So Ramadan fast is from the second category, meaning someone has up to the midday of fasting to make the intention. So now getting into the rulings when the fast breaks. So when a fast breaks, you either have to make up the fast, or you have to make up the fast and also give expiation. You also have to give kaffara. So we'll start off with those things. When the fast breaks, it requires for you to not only make up the fast, but also it necessitates kaffara, it also necessitates expiation. And in order for these two things to be necessitated, there are a few conditions that have to be met. First condition is that someone breaks the fast. So let's say, for example, someone wakes up in the month of Ramadan. They wake up in the intention that today, I feel tired, so I do not want to fast today. Although this person will be sinful for not fasting on that day, since he did not even begin that fast, he didn't break that fast, only qada will be necessary. However, if someone starts their fast and they make the intention of fasting, and during the day they break the fast intentionally, so now for such a person, they'll have to make up the fast, and they'll also have to give kafar, they'll also have to give expiation. Second is that someone breaks the fast intentionally, meaning that if someone forgets that they're fasting and they eat, in that scenario, neither qada nor kafara will be necessary. However, let's say someone, in the month of Ramadan, they're gargling water and water goes down their throat. So this was done unintentionally. Therefore, this person only has to make up the fast. He only has to do qada. But if someone breaks the fast intentionally, they eat during the month of Ramadan, they know that they're fasting and intentionally they eat something. So in that scenario, this person will have to give kafara, they have to give expiation, and they also have to make up the fast. And third condition is that someone breaks the fast intentionally without a valid excuse. So someone breaks their fast, they don't have any medical reasoning to break the fast, they don't have any shari'i reasoning to break the fast, and this person breaks the fast intentionally, this person will have to make up the fast, and he also has to give kafara. And the fourth is that it has to be in the month of Ramadan. It has to be the fast of Ramadan in the month of Ramadan. Meaning that if someone during the month of Ramadan, they break the fast intentionally without a valid excuse, only this person will have to give kafara, he has to give expiation, and he also has to make up the fast. So this also excludes, since this is specified during the month of Ramadan, if someone broke their fast and they have to make up the fast outside of Ramadan, and it's a Ramadan fast they're making up. However, they break that intentionally without a valid excuse, they'll not have to give kafara. They only have to make up that fast, because that was a make-up fast of Ramadan. It wasn't the fast of Ramadan. And then the fifth condition is that someone breaks the fast either through eating, drinking, or marital relations. And by eating over here, it's referring to eating something that's naturally eating, that's supposed to be eaten. For example, if someone, let's say they eat paper or rocks or pebbles or anything of that nature, they do not have to give kafara, they do not have to give expiation, because that's something that doesn't have nutritional value, right? It's something that's not meant to be eaten. However, if they eat something that's meant to be eaten, or if they drink something that's supposed to be drank, then in that scenario, with all the aforementioned condition, if they're met, then this person has to make up the fast, and they also have to give expiation. And the next condition is that the intention has to be made from the night before, meaning the intention has to be made from true dawn. So like, for example, during the month of Ramadan, let's say they didn't make the intention of that day before true dawn, but they make it after true dawn, before the midday of fasting. And now during this day, this person breaks his fast intentionally without a valid excuse in the month of Ramadan, and by eating or drinking, this person, he will not have to give kafara, he only has to make up the fast. The reason is because the intention was made after true dawn. And what exactly is kafara? So kafara is that you have to fast 2 months consecutively, 2 months straight, without any pause. And if someone, 60 days. So if someone were to fast 60 days, and in the middle, after 10 or 15 days, they are not able to fast a day, they have to make up those 60 days again. But however, women who are going through menstruation or they have postnatal bleeding, if they're going through that stage will not be considered, and they'll have to start. For example, let's say they fasted 10 days of kafara, and then they get on menstruation. And whatever period that is, after that period ends, they could restart again, and meaning they'll start from day 11, because they had a valid excuse. And if someone they're genuinely not able to fast 2 months straight, they will have to do either 2 things. One thing is that they have to feed the same 60 people, poor people, 2 meals to their fill. So you either feed the same 60 poor people to their fill, or you feed one poor person to his fill for 2 meals a day for 60 days. So first, and one thing we should know is that this is not an option. If someone is able to fast 2 months straight, they have to fast those 2 months straight. However, if they're not able to fast those 2 months straight, they have this option of feeding either 60 people 2 meals to their fill, or feeding 1 poor person to their fill for 60 consecutive days. And now this was where qada and kafara, meaning expiation, was necessary. And now getting into those things that necessitate only qada. So one is that someone, they break their fast on accident, meaning they're gargling water and water goes down their throat. So now for this person, he doesn't have to give kafara, he only has to make up the fast, because this was done unintentionally. And this, another example of this is, for example, someone thought Fajr time still didn't come in and they're still eating. And then they realized afterwards that ate after Fajr time came in or after True Dawn came in. So this person, since he ate after True Dawn came in unintentionally, he'll only have to make up the fast. He'll not have to give kafara. And if someone was forced to break their fast due to any reason, they'll only have to make up the fast and they'll not have to give kafara. And if someone has a medical reason to break their fast, for example, someone has asthma and they have to take their inhaler during the day. So now, since this person has a medical reason to break their fast, this person will only have to make up the fast and not give kafara. And now we'll get into those type of things which neither require qada, nor do they require qada nor kafara. And these are those things that are considered disliked, however, they'll not have an effect on the fast itself. So the first thing is tasting without swallowing. Although this will not break your fast, you don't have to make up the fast, nor does it necessitate kafara, this will still be considered disliked. The reason is because someone is exposing themselves to danger of breaking the fast. Because when you're tasting something, there's always a chance of going down their throat. Therefore, your fast will break if it goes down your throat. So since you're exposing yourself to the danger of breaking the fast, it will be considered disliked. Another example of this would be brushing your teeth with toothpaste. So although in of itself, brushing your teeth will be fine, however, since you're exposing yourself to the danger of that saliva mixed with the toothpaste going down your throat, which would break your fast, it will be considered disliked. And now getting into those things which are not disliked. First thing is eating or drinking forgetfully. So if someone forgets that they're fast, they eat forgetfully or they drink forgetfully in the month of Ramadan, they don't have to make it up, nor do they have to give kafara or expiation. Their fast will still be valid. Second is cupping or drawing out blood. So neither cupping nor drawing out blood will necessitate qada nor kafara, or neither is it disliked, as long as it does not make someone weak. So as long as drawing out blood is not done in an amount where it will make you weak, it will be fine, and it will be not considered disliked. And the third is using the miswak, will not be considered disliked, will not be considered invalid, or it will not be considered something that will make you or necessitate qada nor kafara. And the fourth thing is rinsing the mouth or nose, will not be considered disliked. And the last thing is taking a bath and also vomiting naturally. So if someone vomits naturally and just comes out and it's less than a mouthful, this will not break the fast, and neither will this be considered disliked. We'll get into, inshallah, in terms of the ruling of vomiting, what type of vomit has what effect on the fast. We'll get into that later, inshallah. And now getting into determining what breaks a fast, right? Through which scenario will it break the fast? Instead of getting into every single mas'ala, every single ruling on a separate note, inshallah, we'll mention the principle due to which the fast breaks. And inshallah, we could take examples and apply it on the principle. So the first thing we have to remember is that whatever is going, it has to enter through a valid orifice. A valid orifice is either the mouth, the nose, the back area, and the ear if the tympanic membrane is perforated, meaning there is this small, you could say membrane that's in your ear. If that's perforated, now if you put something in your ear, that would be considered a valid orifice. However, even if it's not perforated, it would be better to avoid. So if it enters through any of these valid orifices and it reaches the necessary cavity, and what is the necessary cavity? It's either the throat, stomach, or the intestines. So now if something enters through a valid orifice and it reaches the necessary cavity, that will break the fast. Now, inshallah, we'll take this principle and we'll take examples. So for example, IV and injections, will that break the fast? No, because it is not going through a valid orifice, right? And then you have, if a woman has to get a medical exam done and they have to get this exam done, will that break the fast? No, it will not, because it does not reach the necessary cavity. Then you have nicotine patches, you have eye drops, drawing out blood. All these things, since they're not entering through a valid orifice, or if they are entering through a valid orifice, they're not reaching the necessary cavity. So now, since that's not happening, the fast will not break. And then you have suppository. So this is where you get a medical examining done from the back area. And this is actually where they give medicine from the back area. So now, since this is going through a valid orifice and it is reaching a necessary cavity, your fast will break. And you have the nebulizer. This is also going through a valid orifice, going through the mouth, and it is reaching the necessary cavity. That is why your fast will break in this scenario as well. So before wrapping up, now alhamdulillah, we covered up the rulings of the during the month of Ramadan. Just ending off with suhoor and iftar. So suhoor, it is mentioned in Musnad Ahmed, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that suhoor is filled with barakah. So if someone is able to do suhoor, is able to eat suhoor, they should wake up and have suhoor. Because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned it is filled with barakah, and he also mentioned do not leave it, even if you're able to just take a sip of water, take that sip of water. And why is this? Because Prophet ﷺ mentioned in that same hadith that Allah Ta'ala showers His mercy and His angels make dua of istighfar the person for the people who have suhoor. And it is sunnah to delay suhoor right before Fajr time comes in, right before true dawn enters. So as long as you know that true dawn did not enter, you're certain of that, it is sunnah to delay up to that point. And before going on to iftar, people usually say suhoor, sahur, only a slight difference between the two. Suhoor is considered the act of eating suhoor itself, and sahur is considered the food that is eaten at the time of sahur is considered the food that is eaten at the time of suhoor. And now going on with iftar, it is sunnah to hasten to break the fast as soon as possible, as long as you know that the Maghrib time, the sunset has happened. And it is actually makruh it is disliked to delay the iftar. The reason is because the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that the people of my ummah, they will continue to be good as long as they hasten to break the fast. And the reason for it to be disliked to delay iftar is because the Ahlul Kitab back in the day, they would delay their iftar until they see the stars in the sky. So to stop any type of resemblance with them, Prophet ﷺ advised us to break our iftar right when Maghrib time enters. So now, alhamdulillah, covering the rulings of fasting and covering suhoor and iftar, we'll get into Salatul Tarawih. So where does Salatul Tarawih start from? So this was something that was established at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So it is mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, during the month of Ramadan, he came out of his house and he performed 20 raka'at, and there were Sahaba that joined him. And then the second day, same thing happened. Prophet ﷺ left his house and he prayed in the masjid or wherever he prayed, and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum joined him again. And same thing happened on the third day. However, on the fourth day, Prophet ﷺ did not come out, and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they saw that the Prophet ﷺ didn't come out, and they started making noise just in case if he's sleeping that he could wake up. However, Prophet ﷺ, he came out and he said, the reason I'm not coming out is that I fear that if we do this salah will become obligatory upon you. So ever since that time, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they would still perform Salat Tarawih. That doesn't mean that they stopped performing Salat Tarawih. They would still perform it either at their homes or they would perform it in small congregations. And during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, so this act continued, meaning Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they would perform Salatul Taraweeh in their small congregations, or they would perform it at home. So once during the Khilaf of Umar radiallahu anhu, he came out and he saw that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in the masjid, they're performing Salatul Taraweeh in small congregations. So he told the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that since now we know that if we pray in a congregation, in a big congregation, it will not become fard upon us because Prophet ﷺ is not amongst us anymore. Let's perform it in congregation. So he appointed Ubay bin Ka'b radiallahu anhu to lead the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in Salatul Taraweeh. So you could say the jama'ah of praying in big congregation, the sunnah of that started from the time of the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu. And now some rulings regarding Salatul Taraweeh. What is the ruling of praying Salatul Taraweeh? So it is sunnah mu'akkada, it is emphasized sunnah for the men to pray it with jama'ah in the masjid, and for the women to pray at home. And you could say Taraweeh consists of two sunnahs. In order to get the sunniyah of Taraweeh being fulfilled, there's two sunnahs that has to be found. One is the communal sunnah kifaya for men to pray them in a congregation. So the men have to pray it in a congregation is sunnah kifaya. It's a communal practice or a communal sunnah. And what does that mean? Communal sunnah is that if some people do it on behalf of the community, that will fulfill the sunniyah on behalf of the whole community, the entire community. However, if none of the people in the community, they get together and they pray Salatul Taraweeh, now this entire community will be held accountable. That's one of the sunnahs. The second sunnah is to recite the entire Quran throughout the month of Ramadan to complete the Quran. So people ask, if we're praying at home with jama'ah, will our sunnah of praying Salat Tarawih be fulfilled? So maybe the praying with congregation might be fulfilled. However, the sunnah, especially if they're not hufad, the second sunnah of meaning reciting the entire Quran during the month will not be fulfilled. And it is sunnah to perform 20 raka'at of Taraweeh. This was established from the time of Prophet ﷺ, and that has been the method the people after the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Tabi'un until now. And then there is mustahab to rest after every tarweeha. Tarweeha meaning after every 4 raka'at of Taraweeh, it is mustahab to sit down for a while and to rest. And during this time, it is mustahab to recite any type of istighfar, any type of durood, any type of Quranic ayat, or tahleel, takbir of any sort. There is nothing that's specified to do in between these, you could say, small gaps or these small rest periods. We do know there's a lot of masajid, or a few masajid, you have that poster of the Taraweeh dua, Subhana dil mulki wal malakut, that dua. That, reciting that dua in of itself, it's fine, it's mubah. As long as someone does not consider that to be a sunnah or a mustahab action to do during that period of time. So in of itself, someone could do it, but if someone thinks of it to be sunnah and mustahab, that'll not be correct. And then after covering Taraweeh, we have i'tikaf. The meaning of i'tikaf linguistically means to remain or to be steadfast on something or during something. And the shari'i, the legal meaning, is for men to stay in the masjid, to stay in a valid shari'i masjid with the intention of staying. And for women, it is to stay in their designated praying areas at their homes. So that is the shari'i definition. And getting into the different types of i'tikaf, you have the recommended, the nafil i'tikaf. So for this, there's no conditions, meaning fasting for this is not a condition. So meaning if someone is coming for a prayer, they could also make the intention of doing i'tikaf, that whatever time period I'm in the masjid for, they could make the intention of i'tikaf, and that'll be considered nafil i'tikaf. And the second type of i'tikaf you have is the communal sunnah, the i'tikaf that is done in the last 10 days of Ramadan. And this is also communal sunnah. So meaning that if one person does it in the last 10 days of Ramadan and he does i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan, this will suffice on behalf of the entire community. However, if no one does it from the entire community, then the entire community will be blameworthy. And then the last is the necessary, the wajib i'tikaf, meaning someone takes a vow that I am going to do i'tikaf. So now it becomes necessary for this person to at least spend 24 hours of i'tikaf in the masjid, in a shari'i masjid. And the condition in order for your i'tikaf to be valid for all these three types is one, that you have to be Muslim. Second is that the intention has to be found. And the third is that person is sane. And the fourth is that this person is free from all major types of impurities. And for the last two, the communal sunnah and the wajib i'tikaf, there's an additional condition, and that is the condition of fasting. So if someone wants, because they don't mention communal sunnah fasting because that's done in the last 10 days of Ramadan, so it's assumed that the person will be fasting. So for the communal sunnah i'tikaf, you have to fast, and also for the wajib i'tikaf, you'll have to fast as well. And now let's say a person were to leave the masjid during i'tikaf. What is the ruling on that person in i'tikaf? And by the way, this will apply for someone who is sitting in either a sunnah i'tikaf or a wajib i'tikaf, not for a nafil i'tikaf. So a person, he is permitted to leave the masjid, he's allowed to leave the masjid due to valid reasons. And these valid reasons could be of three sorts. One is that this person leaves because of a shari'i reason. He has a shari'i reason. For example, let's say that masjid, the shari'i masjid, he is doing i'tikaf at, they don't pray Jumu'ah there. So he could leave that masjid to go to a Jami masjid to pray Jumu'ah there. So now this person has a valid shari'i reason to go leave the premises of the masjid and to leave his i'tikaf. Second reason is a natural need. Someone has to use the bathroom. So now they could leave the masjid for the duration of whatever they need to relieve themselves and come back to the masjid. And the third is that due to any emergency that they have, if they have to leave the masjid, they may leave the masjid. However, if someone does not have a valid reason to leave the masjid, their i'tikaf will break. And the sunnah i'tikaf, if someone leaves the masjid during the last 10 days and they leave the masjid without a shari'i reason, without a natural need, or without any type of emergency, now this person, his i'tikaf will stop. This person will have to make up that one full day of i'tikaf next year in the month of Ramadan. Now, alhamdulillah, we covered the fiqh of fasting, we covered the taraweeh, and we covered i'tikaf. Before, inshallah, we end the presentation, I wanted to just go over a few questions that are commonly asked. So one is regarding vomiting. If someone vomits while they're fasting, will that invalidate their fast or not? So when it comes to vomiting, there's only two scenarios in which your fast will break. One scenario is when the fast is self-induced of a mouthful or more. So if someone vomits a mouthful or more, unnaturally, that'll be a reason for their fast to be to invalidate their fast. And the second is someone, he vomits naturally, however, he swallows it back knowing that he was fasting, he was in the state of fasting. Now, if this person, although he vomits naturally, he intentionally swallows that vomit back. So now in this scenario, his fast will break as well. And second is if someone, let's say they finish their suhoor and after Fajr Salah or after True Dawn enters, they still have something stuck in their teeth and they take that and they swallow that. Will that break their fast? So now that, you could say that morsel or whatever that's stuck in their teeth, if it's less than the size of a chickpea and then they swallow it, that will not invalidate their fast, meaning their fast will still be valid. However, if it's more than the size of a chickpea and they swallow it, then that will invalidate their fast. However, let's say that this person, he has a morsel of food which is smaller than the size of a chickpea, right? But then he takes that morsel out and then he puts it back in his mouth and then he swallows it. So in this scenario, this person's fast will break because he took it out of his mouth and he put it back in his mouth and he swallowed it. And now regarding ear and eye drops. So eye drops, it will not invalidate the fast because it is not going through a valid orifice. And regarding ear drops, we mentioned that if the tympanic membrane is perforated, then if someone puts ear drops, then that will invalidate their fast. However, it's better to stay away from, it's more cautious to stay away from in either scenario. And then you have the nasal spray. So since the nasal spray is taken through a valid orifice, taken through the nose, and it also reaches the necessary cavity, that will invalidate the fast. And inhaler for people who need it, if they take an inhaler during the month of Ramadan or during their fast, that will also invalidate their fast because that is going through a vital orifice, is going through their mouth, and it is reaching the necessary cavity. And then you have smoking, vaping, or anything of that nature. That will also invalidate the fast because it is going through a valid orifice and it is also reaching the necessary cavity. And menstruation during the month of Ramadan. So you could say that there's 3 scenarios that this could play out. So let's say the Ramadan begins in the state that a woman is already in menstruation. So now this woman, the Ramadan began, or she was already in that state, she may eat or drink in a manner where no fasting person is watching her or anything of that nature. And the second scenario is that the menstruation starts during the day. So she was keeping the fast and starts during the day. So now for this woman, she has to eat or she must eat in a manner where no one is watching her. The reason that she must eat or she has to eat because now it is invalid, it's not permitted for her to fast. She's not allowed to fast. So now she has to eat. So there is no resemblance between her and a fasting person. And now another scenario that would happen is menstruation, it stops during the day. So meaning someone was on menstruation and stops during the day. So now this woman, she will have to abstain away from anything that would invalidate her fast. And now next thing you have is a nursing woman. A woman who is either, pregnant or breastfeeding, it's in the same category. So if they fear that they have reasonable fear that they know that if by doing these 2 actions that would cause harm to them or the child, then it is permitted for them to not fast, right? But they will have to make up the fast later. And now what's going to be considered as reasonable fear in terms of any medical reasoning or for such a woman? One is that there is clear signs that if they were to, like for example, medical reasoning, if someone were to keep a fast, they know that they would end up in the hospital. They know there's clear signs for them. So now this is one condition. The second condition is that they have experience from the past that if they fast, this sickness or this will cause harm to the woman or the child. They have past experience, so they have that past experience. That's second condition. The third is that they ask or they consult a truthful Muslim doctor. So now if they do these 3 things, this will be considered as reasonable fear, and now this person will have a valid excuse to not fast during the month of Ramadan. However, they will still have to make it up whenever they they're able to make it up. And then you have fasting on an airplane. Let's say someone is traveling during the month of Ramadan. And in regards to traveling, when is a person considered a traveler? You have to see where the person is at the time of true dawn. So let's say, for example, someone has a flight during the day at, let's say, for example, 2 o'clock p.m. However, at the time of true dawn, he's still a resident. He's still within his city limits. So now this person it's still obligated upon him to fast. However, if he's not within his city limits at the time of true dawn, now it is not obligated for him to fast. Now, let's say, for example, someone still wants to keep the fast, and let's say they're flying internationally. So now how does this person determine when to, abstain away from food and when he is able to break the fast? You'll have to base that off whatever time zone he's flying over. And you have mobile apps and such to determine where you are going to be at what time. And then you have dental treatment. If someone has to get dental treatment done during the month of Ramadan, in of itself, yes, it'll be fine. But in most cases, it is going to be that you are going to end up swallowing something or something is going to go down your throat, due to which your fast will break. So if something does go down your throat, then that would invalidate the fast. However, for any reason, you're able to keep it from, you're able to not swallow it, then that will not break your fast. And if someone falls unconscious during the month of Ramadan or while they're fasting, will this invalidate the fast? No, it will not. However, if someone is unconscious more than, let's say, for example, they're unconscious for more than 1 day. So like, for example, someone on Monday, like at the lower time, they go unconscious. And then they wake up next day, Dhuhr. So that fast that they were initially keeping, that will still be valid. That will still be considered valid. They will not have to make it up. However, now this when he woke up for Dhuhr, this fast he's currently in is not going to be valid. The reason is because in order for a fast to be valid, the intention has to be made. And since this person was not able to make the intention before the half day of fasting, therefore this fast of his will not count, and he has to make this up after the month of Ramadan. And if someone breaks a makeup fast, if someone breaks a qada fast, let's say that outside of the month of Ramadan, they break their fast due to whatever reason. So now how many fasts does this person have to make up? Does he have to make up one separately for the one he broke during the month of Ramadan and separately for breaking the qada of Ramadan? No. He only has to make up one fast. And if someone takes in rain, snow, or blood, if this is done unintentionally and goes down their throat and they swallow it, it will break the fast. However, they only have to do qada. They will only have to make up the fast. And however, this will not necessitate kafar. This will not necessitate any type of expiation. However, if someone takes in rain, snow, or blood intentionally, now this person will have to make up the fast, but he also has to give kafar. He also has to give expiation. And blood, this is referring to when it is done outside, when the blood comes from the outside. Let's say a person is bleeding in his mouth, right? If he's bleeding in his mouth and the saliva is pink or it's red, if he swallows that saliva, it will invalidate his fast. However, if that saliva is yellow or is clear and he swallows that saliva, it will not break his fast. And then you have inhaling or taking in smoke, dust, water, vapor, or any type of steam. Will that invalidate the fast? So intentionally inhaling it without enjoyment or any type of benefit, so inhaling any of these things intentionally without any type of enjoyment, you didn't have any intention of any enjoyment from it, it will break the fast. However, only qada will be necessary, not kafara. It will not necessitate expiation. However, if someone does it intentionally with the intention of enjoyment or any sort of benefit, now this person will have to make up the fast and he also has to give kafara. And another thing we should know is that this is for anything one inhales that has a physical body, right? For example, like smoke, dust, and all these things, they have a physical body. So now when someone takes this in, these rulings will apply. However, if they're taking something in that has no physical body, like for example, let's say someone is smelling a flower, or there's the smell of musk. So now, since that does not have a physical body, however, they're still smelling it, this will neither necessitate kafara, and neither will this invalidate their fast, right? So it only is regarding something, or is in regards to those things that have a physical body. So, alhamdulillah, with that, we come to the end of the presentation. Inshallah, if anyone has questions, inshallah, we could take questions. Yes.
Let's say you don't have to do ghusl, it's not farz.
Yes.
But you do ghusl. Is that a valid reason to leave the masjid?
So yes, scholars mentioned that they usually keep it to those three conditions, that you have to leave. You can only leave the masjid due to those three conditions, since that's not a fard ghusl or nor a wajib ghusl. Scholars do mention that yes, you're at the couple break. However, if they give this sort of, you could say, leeway, that if you're able to go use the bathroom and during that time you're quickly able to take a shower and come out, then inshallah, like your i'tikaf will still be valid. Yes. Inshallah, if there is any questions online as well, inshallah, we could take those questions.
How about wudu that is not necessary? Like you're just refreshing.
Yeah, so same thing. Same thing applies, yes. So yes, if you eat something if you eat something forgetfully, that you forgot that you're fasting, then that will not invalidate your fast. However, if something goes down your throat accidentally, let's say for example you're making wudu and you're gargling and water goes down your throat, so that will invalidate your fast, but you only have to make qada. You only have to make up the fast. But if you eat something and you forgot that you're fasting, then no matter what amount you ate, your fast will not be invalid. Can you repeat that, please?
So if they're nursing and if there is a possibility that the milk supply will get low.
Yes. So this person is fasting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so then they will have a valid excuse to break their fast. So they could break the fast, however, they will have to make it up later. Shall we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we take as much benefit as we can from this month of Ramadan? And inshallah, we make dua that inshallah on the day of judgment, we're able to present this Ramadan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it be a good means or a means of higher status in the hereafter, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan, Mufti Abdul Rahman, for that wonderful and detailed presentation, and also going through the questions, potential questions which come up. And if anyone has any questions, whether now or later, Mufti Sahib is always here. We also have Mufti Zishan here. Inshallah, you can reach out and ask those questions later as well in the month of Ramadan, whenever you need to, inshallah ta'ala. And alhamdulillah, we went through the mechanics of the month of Ramadan, and the mechanics are very important, right? If you don't do them properly, you're not going to fulfill the obligation of fasting. But we have to also understand, along with that, what is the purpose and the philosophy behind the obligation of fasting. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligate fasting on this ummah and the ummahs that came before us? As Allah says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the reasoning for that. He says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you can gain the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is taqwa? So you can gain taqwa. And I think one of the most beautiful definition of taqwa is the definition of Umar radiallahu anhu. So how would you define taqwa? He said taqwa is like someone wearing a white, jubba, or imagine a white abaya or a white dress, very beautiful and clean. And there's, it rained outside and there are puddles everywhere. And then you happen to take a path where there's a lot of thorns, a very thorny path. So it is not the best route, okay? How are you going to walk outside? Are you going, in order to save your dress, in order to save your thobe or your abaya from mud and dirt, and in order to save it from it being torn, you're going to walk very carefully. You're going to be attentive, 100%. You make sure you're not going to step in any puddles. You make sure you're looking around. You make sure you look where you're, stepping. You make sure, you're not walking into thorns on your right, on your left. So you're constantly attentive and conscious of every step that you take. That is taqwa. That is what? That is taqwa. Taqwa is being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before you take any step in your life. Before you take any step in your life. That is the purpose of Ramadan. To gain that consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to develop that spirituality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, there are different kinds of creations, right? One is, as we know, the malaika, the angels. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them a maqam, a rank, because they are constantly engaged in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is another creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which are called the animals, right? Who have complete free will, right? They do whatever they want to do in a way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a concoction, a combination of the two, which is insan. Which is what? Insan. So in every human being, there are two forces. There is the malakiyah and there is the bahimiyah. The angelic force and the animalistic force. So what is the angelic force? In order to develop whatever you want to develop, you have to work on those muscles. So in order to develop your angelic muscles, you have to do what the angels do. You have to do what? What the angels do. And that is how you're going to get closer to the angels. And one of the sifat of the malaika are what? That they don't eat. That they what? They don't eat. And they're engaged in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're clean, they're pure, they're tahir all the time, and so on and so forth. And the exact opposite, the antithesis of that, are the animals. What do they do? It's all about eating and drinking and tearing things apart, and so on and so forth. So the more you eat and the more you consume, right, all the time, if your life is all about just consumption, right, consumerism, then you are getting closer to the animal qualities in you. And if you keep doing that, what will happen? Eventually, that human being will become worse than animal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the Quran. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. That they are like cattle, but if they continue on this path, بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ, they will be worse than cattle, worse than animals. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. These are the people who are oblivious and consumed in all types of dunyawi things, all type of worldly things. The opposite of that is sawm. The opposite of that is fasting, right? And when you're in the state of fasting, you are doing what the angels do, right? When you're in the state of tahara, you're doing what the angels do. When you're in a state of salah, you're doing what the angels do. And the more you do these things, the closer you get to the angels. And that is how you train the angelic forces inside of you. So the month of Ramadan is what? Is a blessing, is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to train the angelic abilities inside of you and me and all of us. That is the purpose of Ramadan. The purpose of Ramadan is not to eat more. I say this all the time. Because we eat more in the month of Ramadan, you are defeating the purpose of Ramadan if you do that. You are defeating the purpose of fasting if you do that. Why? Because the idea is to starve the nafs, is to starve the animalistic quality inside of you, is to starve the bahimiyah that's inside of you. And if you feed it, like a Thanksgiving turkey at the time of suhoor and iftar, then how are you going to achieve that? We're never going to achieve that. That is why we're not able to benefit from Ramadan in such a way that after Ramadan, we continue to build our spirituality until next Ramadan. That's the goal. The goal is that when you start Ramadan, the first 10 days are maghfirah. Why? So that you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get cleansed. And align your frequency with the frequency of the malaika. And when that happens, then you go into the next 10 days. And that is what? That is when وَأَوْسَطُهُ رَحْمَةً. The second 10 days is rahmah, the mercy and compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That'll happen when your frequency is aligned with the angels. Right? That can only happen if you use your first 10 days properly. Then you will benefit from the next 10 days efficiently. And then if you do that, then you will get into the last 10 days, which is the purpose of the human life. عِتْقٌ مِّنَ النَّارِ. Salvation from the hellfire. And if you get that as a human being, as a Muslim, then you are truly and eternally successful. And if you don't, then you are eternally failure. That is why the Prophet ﷺ, the most compassionate being ever to walk on the face of this earth, he is making du'a'un alayhim. He's making bad dua against those people who got the month of Ramadan as a blessing, as a ni'mah, as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they did not welcome it and honor it, and they wasted it to the point that it did not lead to their maghfirah. The Prophet ﷺ said dua, Ameen, to the dua of Jibreel alayhi salam, who said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy those people who got the month of Ramadan as a blessing and they wasted it and did not get their maghfirah done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah save us from that category. So we have to understand the purpose of Ramadan. It is not to go in iftar parties. It is not to go in suhoor parties. The month of Ramadan is not for socializing. The Prophet ﷺ used to socialize the least in the month of Ramadan. The least. And so much so that in the last 10 days and 10 nights, he would cut himself off from everybody, even his wives. Even his wives, his spouses. And he would isolate himself in the masjid. Because when you isolate yourself and start thinking about the reality of why you were created, the reality of life, the reality of death, that is when you start getting closer to understanding the purpose of why you were sent in this world. All the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam went through what we call khalwa. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when did he become a prophet? When he went for khalwa in the cave of Hira. Yes or no? So that khalwa was necessary. You have to cut yourself off from the hustle and the bustle of life in order to focus your attention so that your frequency with the malaika can match, so that you can get the rahmah and the maghfirah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you do all of these things properly, then and then only you will reach the climax of Ramadan, which is going to be in the night of Laylatul Qadr. That is the climax of Ramadan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send all of his angels. Now, why is the angels coming to the earth? Because now, what is supposed to happen? That the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam together is able to match the frequency of the malaika to the extent that the angels, along with Ar-Ruhul Qudus, that is Jibreel alayhi salam, is coming to the earth. With what? Salamun. With what? Peace. And salam doesn't just mean peace, as in, that's a lame translation. Salam means with the compassion, forgiveness, and the salvation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the crux of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us Ramadan. To attain that salvation. To train our nafs so that we can remain confident Muslims throughout the entire year. And the next year, our Ramadan is better. The next year, our Salah is better. The next year, we're better Muslim until you get closer to dying. Until you get closer to meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But every Ramadan is a refresher. Probably, may Allah give us tawfiq. Sometimes the next Ramadan is worse than the previous one. What does that show? That shows that we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We're not able to build a house with the bricks of ni'mah of Ramadan that Allah is giving us in our lives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq and ability. And I'll finish with this. Make Ramadan easy for yourselves and your spouses. Forget making, what do you call, 100 menu item. Samosa and pakore and the bichari. All day long, she has to be in the kitchen. Fasting, but making all the, mashallah, the long list of, a restaurant. The house turns into a restaurant. Everybody has, Ramzan mein to dahi bade kha. Ramzan mein to ye bhi, Ramzan mein to Ramadan. Is Ramadan not to eat, Baba? The biggest sunnah, people, halwa, the biggest sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to eat less, by the way. The biggest sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to eat less meat. He ate less meat. MashaAllah, Muslims eat meat every day. Right? So we have to realize we're going the opposite way. Shaitan has fooled us in a very nice way. Right? So make it easy for yourself and for your wives. You don't have to do da'wats in Ramadan. You're not obligated. You don't have to eat biryani every day and samosas every day and pakoras and bhajis and whatever else is out there every day. Right? Do it after Eid. Do it in Shawwal if you want to. Make Ramadan easy for yourselves and your wives and your stomachs. Right? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, protect us, inspire us, and give us tawfiq and ability to do more ibadah in the month of Ramadan. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to train our angelic self in such a way that we're able to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the maghfirah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're able to achieve the climax of Ramadan. We're able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the night of Laylatul Qadr. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Jazakallah khairan. Inshallah we'll have a salah in 5 minutes. If somebody needs to make wudu, they can make wudu. And we'll have adhan now. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamu ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakallah.